Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will ask Kate Holmes from the new chaplain for the mental health in Suffolk to open proceedings.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start by reading a contemporary Celtic blessing. May the gift of leadership awaken in you as a vocation. Keep you mindful of the providence that calls you to serve. As high over the mountains the eagle spreads its wings, may your perspective be larger than the view from the foothills. When the way is flat and dull, in times of grey endurance, may your imagination continue to evoke horizons. When thirst burns in times of drought, may you be blessed to find the wells. May you have the wisdom to read time clearly and know when the seed of change will flourish. In your heart, may there be a sanctuary for the stillness where clarity is born. May your work be infused with passion and creativity and have the wisdom to balance compassion and challenge. May your soul find the graciousness to rise above the fester of small mediocrities. May your power never become a shell wherein your heart would silently atrophy. May you welcome your own vulnerability as the ground where healing and truth join. And may integrity of soul be your first ideal, the source that will guide and bless your work. Let us pray. Almighty God, we pray for all those who bear authority in our town, for local government officers and councillors and all who give their time and energy in caring for the common good. We thank you for the educational institutions in this town, for the service, not only for the nurturing of young people that they bring, but also other services and opportunities they provide. We ask you to have regard, Lord, for the financial difficulties we all face. Particularly tonight, we think of the difficulties of Suffolk Police and pray that in attempting to make part of the budget balance, they will not lose sight of the needs of the local community. Grant our citizens grace to work together with honest and faithful hearts, each caring for the good of all, that seeking first your kingdom and its righteousness, they may have added to them all things needful for their daily sustenance and the common good. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. Please note that the monitoring officer, in consultation with myself, has granted permission for the meeting to be filmed and photographed. If anyone present, including members of the public, object to being filmed, would they please indicate now? Also, could I still remind everyone who has a mobile phone that it should be switched to silent mode whilst the meeting is in progress. Agenda item 1. I've received apologies from Councillor Quinton, Councillor Knowles and Councillor Kirby. Are there any more? Councillor Harrison?
Councillor Richard Pope.
Noted, thank you. Agenda item 2, minutes. May I sign the unconfirmed minutes of the council meeting held on the 26th of February 2014 as a correct record? Item 3, order of business. Are there any changes to the order of business as printed on the agenda? David, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you may notice, we do have a number of people in the public gallery who are here with an interest in item 14, the motion on the police control room, at least some of whom have to be up the road to Force HQ to be on their shift. So can I request that we move item 14 forward in the agenda so we take it immediately after Mayor's communications?
Any objections? Thank you, Councillor Esmond. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Are there any councillors wish to declare an interest in any of the items of business on the agenda? Councillor Grant.
Yeah, item 14. Obviously, I have a personal and pecuniary interest, and I shall be leaving the room during that debate.
No? Anyone else? No? Thank you. Agenda item 5, Mayor's communication. You have got the Mayor's communications in front of you, but I would like to draw your attention to a couple of things. And firstly, one of the local primary schools, Sidegate Lane School in particular, held a business week for students, and as Mayor, I was pleased to take part in this and to talk to the children about the importance of learning in civic life. I also visited the Thomas Woolsey School for their open day and met with staff and students and their families, and that was very interesting. The Suffolk East Federation for Women Institute held their annual meeting again at Trinity Park, and it was a pleasure to welcome so many women in Ipswich. I think pleasure may be misrepresentation there, because although I enjoyed it, it was terrifying. Having to speak and have 900 pair of eyes boring into you. But you'll notice that I have survived. And Daisy and I would like to thank everyone who supported our charity quiz night. It was a sellout evening raising a significant amount of money for our chosen charities. And we were delighted to present the Croydon Cup this year to the winning team. Where's Johnny? Peculiar name, I thought. Anyway. The Mayor's Charity Ball is almost here. There are few places available for those of you who would still like to join the fun on Saturday. We have received a lot of support this year from the local business community as well as friends and colleagues. And I'd like to thank you all for that. Finally, this is our last meeting until June, and although no formal announcement has been made as yet, I do hear that several of you might not be standing in the election. You obviously know who you are, so I will not mention any names, but I would like to thank you all for your long and dedicated service. Thank you. Agenda item 14. Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, there's no doubt that the proposal to move the Suffolk Police Control Room to Norfolk has worried many people in our county. Government funding cuts are causing many different public authorities to consider providing shared services. This isn't new. Ipswich Borough Council has a shared museum service with Colchester and a shared revenues and benefits service with Baber and Mid Suffolk. Later on this evening, we'll be discussing how we can work closer together with Suffolk New College. Most of these shared services have tended to be backroom functions, such as finance, HR or IT, that members of the public don't interact with. When it comes to frontline services, though, there are some things that really should stay local. So although all backroom benefit processing is carried out by staff working at Grafton House in Ipswich, all 3 councils have retained their local offices where members of the public can take their documents and ask for advice. And clearly, we haven't closed the museum and Christchurch Mansion and moved their collections to Colchester. That would obviously be very inconvenient for members of the public in Ipswich. But, Mr Mayor, moving the police controls room to Norfolk wouldn't just be inconvenient, it would be extremely dangerous. The staff in the police control room are highly skilled with a great deal of local knowledge. Every second can count in an emergency when a call is made. So having somebody know the difference between radon with an E and radon with an A is important. A gas leak at Bacton in Suffolk is of a very different scale to a leak at the Bacton gas terminal in Norfolk. More than 3/4 of the staff in the control room have worked there for longer than 5 years. 15% have more than 20 years' experience. Suffolk's Chief Constable stated quite categorically at the recent public meeting that local knowledge is important. It is even more important given the nature of the IT system used by both Suffolk and Norfolk. I have been told by control room staff that this has a very poor mapping system which makes it difficult for staff to find addresses even when they know where they are. There is no doubt that a move would mean a great deal of lost knowledge and experience from Suffolk. Only 1 member of staff in the control room would have a shorter journey to travel to Wymondham. 93% of staff would have a much longer journey. Childcare and other family responsibilities mean relocating is a non-starter for around 60% of staff. Now, of course, there are examples of control rooms that have merged, but these are hardly encouraging precedents. The problems of the East of England ambulance service are well known. And the classic example from the new joint fire control room is that someone reporting a fire on the Orwell Bridge was asked if they knew its postcode or whether it was near a prominent landmark. We laugh, but this is scary stuff, Mr. Mayor. No other police force in England has gone down this route. Some have looked at it, but they've decided not to go ahead. This would be a huge experiment and a gamble with the safety of people of Suffolk. Now, it is the Suffolk Police and Crime Commissioner who has the final say on whether this move will go ahead. It is clear from what he said in public that he's having second thoughts. It would not be an easy decision for him. Government cuts mean that savings have to be found, and I have to say, Mr. Passmore has not helped himself by refusing to raise the police precept. So, until we have a definitive announcement that the control room will not be moving to Suffolk, we must remain vigilant. Give the Commissioner support to stiffen his resolve, but also keep up the pressure to ensure that he does not go back on his word. The police control room is the default call handler for emergency calls that cannot be routed elsewhere. With the well-documented problems following the mergers of the other 2 blue light services, we must draw a line in the sand and say that for the safety of everyone in this county, the police control room must stay in Suffolk. I move the motion.
Councillor Crane.
Harvey Crane, proud to second this motion. In my day job, I work in an organisation that since 2006 has lost nearly 50% of its staff. And despite that, we seem to have more senior staff than ever before. I'm really worried with this reorganisation that it seems to be another case that Suffolk Police are following that precedent. I'm sure that here it's staff at the sharp end that are being potentially cut and losing their jobs, while probably senior management will end up getting a bonus for making that difficult decision. So I worry about this decision from that basis. I also worry about this from an equality perspective. It hasn't escaped my notice that the people predominantly affected here are female and low grades. Again, it's not a great advertisement for Suffolk Police and its commitment to equality. Over this year, we've seen a series of moves of work away from Ipswich. Suffolk Crown Court work is now done in Norfolk. Your post is sent to Chelmsford before being delivered back to Ipswich to be delivered. Your council tax valuation, go to Colchester, and if you want any advice on your driving licence, phone Swansea. I'm not quite sure why things are merged and centralised. Ipswich always does badly. If this proposal went ahead, it would be a very bad decision in terms of the economy of Ipswich. It would also be, as David identified, a very bad decision in terms of public safety. In emergency situations, as David identified, local knowledge can literally mean the difference between life and death. When Tim Passmore was elected as the Police and Crime Commissioner in Suffolk, many people weren't convinced there was a need for another elected politician on a big salary, and the turnout was 16% of voters. And indeed, he got second in a two-horse race. Here's a chance for him to become a bit more popular, and I think supporting this motion would be a good day for democracy, a good day for the safety of the people of Suffolk, and probably a good day for Tim Passmore. Please support this motion.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to table an amendment to this motion, which is now going to be handed out to councillors. Maybe I should just wait for a few moments.
No? Councillor Harrison.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to table an amendment to the motion because I don't believe Councillor Ellesmere has proposed a strong enough motion. I would like to add the following words to the end of the motion so that it will read that this council calls on Suffolk's Police and Crime Commissioner to reject proposals to move Suffolk's Police Contact and Control Room to Norfolk and commits this council to collaborate with the Police and Crime Commissioner and other public services in Suffolk to share facilities to achieve the necessary savings to ensure that the Police Contact and Control Room is retained in Suffolk. I very much hope that Councillor Ellesmere will accept this amendment so that we can send a strong, cross-party and united message to those, like the Chief Constable and the Norfolk Police and Crime Commissioner, Stephen Bett, who do want to merge our police control room, that we, Ipswich Borough Council, are against such a merger. Mr. Mayor, we've tabled this amendment to try and ensure that the contact and control room will not be closed and merged with Norfolk, but realising budgetary restraints and the need to make savings, we feel that this amendment will give the Police and Crime Commissioner more ammunition than the present motion proposed by Councillor Ellesmere, which does not go, in our opinion, anywhere near far enough. It is clear, Mr. Mayor, that nobody in Suffolk wants to see the police control room moved to Norfolk. On Friday last week, our Member of Parliament, Ben Gummer, visited the control room with Tim Passmore and made it quite clear that he did not want to see the control room merged with Norfolk. I need not go into great detail, as this has received a great deal of press coverage over the last few days. Mr. Passmore has on numerous occasions, both in the local media and at many meetings he has attended, made it quite clear that no decision has been made by him to merge the two control rooms. Mr. Passmore is doing a great job insisting on consulting with the public and developing the concept of a combined shared services partnership. Mr. Passmore has been going through the budget in great detail, having not been convinced by the business case which was presented to him. We know that massive savings have to be made within the constabulary. And this is one of the reasons we have tabled this amendment, to see if Ipswich and Suffolk can work together to make some of these savings. A shared service partnership would bring together a number of functions, as Councillor Ellesmere has just said: human resources, finance, IT, procurement, estates and transport, all at one location near Ipswich. And as Councillor Ellesmere rightly said, we should be talking about joint working with Suffolk New College during the evening. And I believe this is probably the way forward. Surely we could look at council properties that could co-locate police estate, working on finding savings through the public sector estate. We could look at procurement in more detail. Perhaps as an idea, buying our fleet vehicles together rather than separately. I see that 30 vehicles are being purchased later on this year for the maintenance and contract department, and another 16 for Gipping House. So maybe we could talk to the local constabulary about that and see if we could do it together. And maybe, which is probably very important, there are ways in which purchasing together with the police could support our local economy. So, collaboration and cooperation with the constabulary and hopefully other councils in Suffolk to see if by working together we can make the savings required is what this amendment is all about. Mr Mayor, rather than simply attacking the Police and Crime Commissioner, we should be asking what this council can do to help him achieve the necessary savings without having to merge the two control rooms. And this is why I think it's vital that the motion is amended so we can send a clear message to Mr Passmore that this council is ready to cooperate with him to find savings without seeing this vital frontline service moving to Norfolk. And just before I end, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to echo the words this week of another Suffolk Member of Parliament, Therese Coffey. She said, "This council should tell the Norfolk PCC to butt out with his gloom and doom views for our police force. It's a disgraceful intervention. Leave Mr Passmore to get on with the good job he is already doing." Mr Mayor, I move the amendment.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to second it and reserve the right to speak.
Councillor Ellesmere, do you accept the...
No, not Mr Mayor. Do you wish me to explain why?
Do you want to?
Quite happy to do so. I mean, the wording of the motion that we put down was quite deliberately there so that anybody who opposed the moving of the police control room to Norfolk could vote in favour of it. It's not, as Councillor Harson said, attacking the Police and Crime Commissioner. It is intended to support the position that he has publicly made. And I'm a bit disappointed that the Conservative group are looking to play games with this. The fatal flaw with the amendment is that we cannot commit this council to collaborating with the Police and Crime Commissioner because we've got absolutely no idea whether he wants to collaborate with us. What I can commit to is exploring whether the Police and Crime Commissioner does want to work with the Borough Council and any other public authorities to share services to keep them in Ipswich. But until such time as we know that the Police and Crime Commissioner wants to do that, and he's shown no signs of it up until now, then obviously we can't commit to it. I would suggest that we vote down this amendment. It is flawed, and let's just go back to the very simple motion that we put down, which is to say what I believe we all believe is that we do not want the Suffolk Police Control Room to move to Norfolk, and let's just vote for that.
Now we will debate the amendment. Councillor Cann.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm in the unusual position, at least in what Councillor Ellesmere said initially and what Councillor Harson has just said, of being in complete agreement with both of them. One can only guess or judge as to who is playing politics here, and I'm certainly not going to arbitrate between the two. What I would say is that the original motion for Councillor Ellesmere we agree with, and it has the benefits of being short and to the point, and we would also agree with the Conservative amendment, so we should be voting for both.
I wonder which one will pass. I think in a few minutes' time we should find out. Thank you.
Councillor Sensi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will take this opportunity to speak. Thank you. I first want to go on the point of Tim Passmore's collaboration. If it wasn't for Tim Passmore, this would not have been in the open in the first place. It was not his idea to merge the two control rooms. It was the police. And he asked for it to go out for consultation. He has been going to all the area committees and speaking and making it very clear that that was the case. The difference with our motion, the amendment, is that we are trying to provide a solution as well, something that he can hang his hat on, something to hook onto, rather than just stating our case, which is about the problem. And I think that's quite typical, actually. We do like to come up with solutions. There is a budget deficit. And Tim Passmore himself said that there are still many more savings to be made without having to do this, and he would like to look into it. So he is going to be able to collaborate, will be willing. In fact, I'm willing to pass over my mobile phone and the leader can ring him and ask him that right now if he wishes, because I know what the answer will be. This is not about playing politics, and actually if anyone's playing politics, it's the leader saying that Tim Passmore is having second thoughts. It is not a second thought, because he never had a first thought. Okay, shall I rephrase that? I think we can see now who wants to make politics. What I'm saying is that there was never any definite decision until he saw the business case, and he has kept an open mind. And that open mind is now finding its way into our arena for us to discuss. As far as the PCC role as well, he is doing a fantastic job, and this proves his worth, because if he wasn't there, this may very well have run away and we wouldn't have had any say, and we wouldn't even be able to put this motion forward. So I cannot see, the Lib Dems are obviously taking that nice little middle road. I'd like them to actually express which they prefer, because I think ours does come up with a solution, and I do think it does give more oomph to Tim Passmore when he wants to reject it, which I'm quite confident that he will, actually. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Le Gris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's actually a great deal of merit in the amendment, but there's no time frame. We have set our budget for this year. The police are in the process still of setting their budget for this year. And had this not appeared on the scene now, it would have been straightforward. Collaboration is sensible. We want to collaborate with whoever we can, because it gives us economies of scale. But within a time frame of now, with no time frame published, and if Councillor Harston had actually put some time frames in when this was due to happen, how it was due to happen, the immediate thing is due to happen immediately, quite possibly. You cannot wind this forward with all the additional work that would need doing to actually have it happen within the immediate time frame. So Councillor Ellesmere's position that he's in is quite straightforward. He needs to send out a message loud and clear now that we will support him in rejecting amalgamation. That done, all the other things kick into place. Therefore, I believe Councillor Ellesmere is right in taking the view that he has that your amendment is premature.
Councillor Ross.
Again, there were some slight concerns about this collaboration. I think we need to collaborate, as Councillor Green said. But we made a very difficult decision that was attacked on the other side of the room to put council tax up. It wasn't an easy decision, it was a very difficult decision. But the County Council and Mr Passmore have made the decision not to place council tax up. Right? They could easily save many things. Now, the control rooms must be saved, I have no doubt about that at all. But there are a number of police services that have already been merged. the fingerprints, and loads of other civilian jobs have already emerged with the police force, and Mr. Passmore didn't save them. There is great concern. Collaboration is important, but if you look at the previous collaboration, Landmark House, we've constantly had the county council and the police blaming each other who cost the most money. It didn't save any money for the police force, and it didn't save any money for the county council. It put a large budget deficit on both. We are working hard, and if Mr. Parson wants to come and speak to us, he can come and speak to us. We came to the scrutiny meeting where we made it quite clear to all those present, including Conservatives, that it was likely that the control room would close. So we need to keep this change of heart, and we need to keep him, and this simple motion tonight will keep that pressure on and help him know that people of Suffolk do not want the control room moved.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there is another weakness in terms of the amendment that's being put forward. The point is that if this constructive collaboration is to go ahead, then it should in fact involve the Suffolk County Council as well as Ipswich Borough Council, because quite clearly there is a lot of common ground between the two organisations, and we know, for example, that the Suffolk Fire and Rescue Service are already talking with the police about possible collaboration in terms of shared services, amongst other things. And at the moment, of course, the Conservatives at the county have said absolutely nothing about their view on it. They've got no motion to actually support what's being proposed in Councillor Ellesmere's motion, but I will be asking a question of them tomorrow at their full council meeting in terms of what their view is, so we can actually push that forward. But that's tomorrow, and we're here tonight to make sure that the Borough Council has its firm, positive statement in terms of what it actually wants out of this motion. And whilst there are some understanding within the amendment, it's not the point of this evening and needs to be talked about elsewhere with other organisations that perhaps would have even more influence in terms of making those overall savings that are required with any sort of collaboration in terms of services. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Carnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I start by making the point that we are only able to debate the possible move of the control room to Norfolk because of the PCC arrangements that have been introduced by the coalition government. If we were operating under Labour's older regime, the council would have been faced by a fait accompli, because if the two chief constables had agreed to move the control room, that would have been it. We would not have been in a position to debate it. But thanks to Tim Passmore, who's doing a splendid job as the police commissioner in Suffolk, members of the public are being asked to air their views, and this council has an opportunity to make its position known. The decision is not being taken behind closed doors. I think, incidentally, Mr. Mayor, if I may throw this in, it's interesting to know that the present setup of with the PCC and his staff is actually costing £120,000 a year less than the previous police authority arrangements. Let me make one or two other points. We've had this question about whether Tim Passmore would collaborate with the Borough Council over savings. As Councillor Chincy has said, I'm sure there's no doubt about it. If you look at his track record, he was the leader of Mid-Suffolk Council when the link-up with Baber and the shared services with Baber was put on the table. He has a good track record in this area, and I'm sure he'd be willing to cooperate with the borough over making savings. The whole point, Mr. Mayor, is that we want the control room to remain in Suffolk. As Councillor Crane has said, local knowledge is essential, and in emergencies it can be the difference between life and death. So we want that control room to stay in Suffolk, at Martlesham. But the purpose of the amendment is to make the point that the question about the relocation of the control room has been raised because of the need to make savings. So the purpose of the amendment is simply to point out that it is possible to make savings relatively easily to maintain a control room in Suffolk. And those savings can be achieved if public services in Suffolk work together and share facilities and make economies. I would point out there to Councillor Gardner in his comment, our amendment simply says other public services in Suffolk, because we think it's not a matter only for the Borough Council, it's a matter for other district councils, it's a matter for the County Council. I might even argue it's a matter for other public services like the National Health Service. But we are not saying it should be confined to the borough. All public services in Suffolk should work together to make the necessary saving to retain that control room in the county. Now, also on the agenda tonight, the administration has put forward a paper for sharing services with Suffolk New College to achieve savings. All I'm saying to you is that our amendment is basically an extension of this. We're saying let all public services work together in the county to achieve savings which could then be used to retain the control room where we all want it. Our amendment is in fact absolutely in line with the administration's own policy, and I can't, for the sake of me, understand why Councillor Ellesmere can't accept the amendment. I would ask the Council to support the amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to respond to Councillor Ross in relation to the ONS meeting last week. Until by weight of Labour numbers at ONS, there was a change brought about to the minutes. The initial minutes didn't reflect that PCC passed nor cast any doubt whatsoever over the Suffolk control room, and I, as chair, didn't note any doubt at all.
Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Stimpson.
I was at the meeting and I raised a change to the minutes. No objection was made whatsoever by any of the opposition councillors that were there. They were all in full agreement, so I can't understand what the point is being made.
Councillor Vickery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to bring to the attention of the Council the collaboration which has already taken place at places like Framlingham, Debenham, Ipswich and Elmswell, and I understand that there's likely to be further combined police and fire stations cooperating together in the pipeline, and it shows how collaboration can work well in Suffolk, and I think that that is the way it should be going. Certainly don't think it should go to Norfolk, even though I come from Norfolk, but I should be supporting this amendment.
Councillor Harrison, correct to reply.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm obviously very disappointed that Councillor Ellesmere and his colleagues can't support this amendment, because I do think it actually puts some meat on the bone. It seems to me, because Councillor Ellesmere said this and also Councillor Ross, that one of their solutions was to put up the police precept. In other words, hurt the council taxpayers of this town again. That seems to be their answer for everything. We wanted to work, as Councillor Carnell rightly said, with all the councils around Suffolk, including the County Council, who I'm sure will be very pleased to help in this collaboration and cooperation to save our control room. And I want to say that very, very strongly, that us here on this side of the room are very much for keeping the control room here at Martlesham. And the staff, I know, are here tonight, and we want to support them in putting our amendment forward.
Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of the Conservative councillors seem to have indicated that we've been attacking the Police and Crime Commissioner in some way more we've been saying. I don't think there's anything in the motion that we put forward or in what I said that attacks the Police and Crime Commissioner. To say that he has had second thoughts on moving the control room to Norfolk is not an attack. I'm glad he has had second thoughts. But I believe I'm the only councillor in this room who actually attended the public meeting on the 27th of February where the merger of the police control rooms was going to be discussed. There were papers on the table. The recommendation was to approve the merger. Everybody in that room, I believe, going into it, except perhaps the Suffolk Police and Crime Commissioner, believed that a decision was going to be made at that meeting, behind closed doors, to merge the two police control rooms. And there is no way that it would have got to that point if there had not been approval from Tim Passmore to get to that point. Now, the fact that he's had second thoughts is excellent news. That he's now embarking on a series of consultations. That is also good news. It means he has changed his mind. And I don't mean that as an attack on our Police and Crime Commissioner. I say it as something positive because it means that we're in with a chance. Now, I just come back to the amendment itself, which is to say that the Council commits to collaborate with the Police and Crime Commissioner. And I've got to say, we have offered to do this in the past. We have offered office space in Grafton House to the police to use it so that they could save money, and it has not been taken up. So although that we can be willing to work with them, and we certainly are, I cannot guarantee that that will be reciprocated. So what I will commit to here tonight is I will contact Tim Passmore tomorrow and say that the Ipswich Borough Council is willing to collaborate with Suffolk Police to achieve the savings they need to keep the police control room here in Suffolk. But what I cannot do is vote for the amendment.
We will now take a vote on the amendment. All those in favour? All those against? The amendment is lost. Now, we'll move back to the substantive motion. Anyone want to speak on that? Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just reiterate that I do not think there's anything in the motion that we put forward that anybody who wants to keep the police and control room here in Suffolk can object to, and I hope that we vote for this motion unanimously.
Those in favour? As unanimous. Thank you. We will now move back to item 6, questions. We will now pause for a minute until members of the public leave. Thank you.
Tracy, she'll know them, won't she? She will. She might want to speak to them.
Yes. Can someone get Councillor Grant? We can. Right. Item 6, please. Can I remind colleagues that supplementary questions must relate to the original question and not be preceded by a statement? Question 1, Councillor Sensi to Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does the Leader of the Council agree with me that area committees are, in practice, less empowering than the area forums used to be?
Councillor Ellsworth.
No, Mr Mayor, I do not agree. I think most observers, objectively comparing the operation of the forums and the committees, would not come to the same conclusion as Councillor Cenci.
Supplementary, Councillor?
Would the Leader of the Council agree that one example of bad practice, which I believe makes the whole meeting less empowering, was the presentation by Councillor Sandra Gage, who launched a policy at the South West and North West Area Committee that was actually a Tory policy, took credit for all the best bits, as if they were her idea, whilst decrying a lack of budget by Suffolk County Council Tories, telling people that she did not want it to be political, but continually told the audience that she was a Labour councillor. I think I counted at least 4 times. Not political.
Councillor Ellsworth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was at the meeting that Councillor Cenci refers to. This was a change in policy on 20-mile-per-hour zones. I believe that the County Council has brought in, but they did not see fit to promote that to area committees. And as I recall, the only person in that room who actually asked a question of Councillor Gage was in fact Councillor Cenci. So at least one person in the room did find it empowering.
And that's not the residents, though, is it? That's me.
Question 2, Mr Algar, to Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks. Right. As it is likely that a statutory duty for local authorities to report potential victims of modern slavery will be introduced as part of the forthcoming Modern Slavery Bill, has the Council put any provisions in place so it can do this?
Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks for your question, Mr Algar. I first became aware of the Modern Slavery Bill in December, when the actual draft bill itself was rushed out on the same day as its own committee reported its findings. So it always seemed to be a bit half-baked to me. And while researching the answer to this question, I was delighted to find that UNICEF, that well-known loony left organisation, state on their website, at the moment, the bill doesn't go far enough to keep children safe from danger. Please don't let the bill fall short of its potential. And I was delighted to be able to click on a link, really easy politics, and send a link to the government, asking them to make sure it fulfilled its potential. So I would encourage everyone else to do that, otherwise we'll end up with a half-baked bill. Anyway, time has moved on, and the Joint Committee on the Draft Modern Slavery Bill held its final evidence session on the 12th of March, and this evidence will now influence the final draft of the bill. At this point, the Council is aware of the draft bill and is awaiting the details. It's our understanding there will be a legal duty to report all suspected victims to the NCA, but the precise roles and responsibilities of the various agencies is not clear at present. It's likely that any duty would be led by community protection, with input from HR as appropriate. Training of frontline staff will be required, as with safeguarding and terrorism, which we do at the moment. That should be anti-terrorism. Terrorism? This will include any requirements to record and report relevant incidents. And I can assure you, Mr Algar, that the Council will be very pleased to perform any duties that the Government puts upon it on this bill.
Glad to hear it. In the event that the Modern Slavery Bill did not oblige local authorities to raise awareness within local communities of the issue of modern slavery, would this administration support any initiatives to raise awareness or launch such initiatives itself?
Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks for your supplementary. I mean, obviously, people trafficking, especially children or women for exploitation, is something that surely everyone is appalled by, and we surely would do anything in our power to stop that happening. It is difficult, of course, to identify some of these cases, but the Council is in a position where we do have officers who are out on the streets and in the estates looking for that kind of thing, and I'm sure we would welcome any initiative that you may know of. I'm expecting that the Government bill will be rushed through,
It will get Queen's speech time. I believe that Theresa May has put enough political capital behind it that she would look pretty stupid if it didn't happen. So I do expect it to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Question 3, Councillor Lovington. Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Noting that you have received a petition from an Ipswich street with terraced housing close to the road, requesting that their bins should not be emptied before 7:30 a.m. Are there enough hours within the working day to protect densely populated, narrow residential streets from the noise and disturbance of refuse collection starting before 7:30 a.m?
Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope there hasn't been a bit of misunderstanding around this, but there was indeed a petition, and I suspect it was prompted by the fact that everybody has had a letter saying that refuse collection could start as early as 6 o'clock. And some people may have taken that to mean that they think that their street's going to be collected at 6 o'clock, which is not quite the same thing. As things stand at the moment, this month, refuse collection can commence any time from 6:30. So the change is actually half an hour for those streets that may be, if you like, in the front line or the first to be collected. It happens that when we looked into this, the particular street that had raised the petition, it looks as if the way the design is being put together for the refuse collection, that this particular street was going to be collected at 7:30, which they seem to be fairly happy with. But I just thought I'd make that point. As far as the issue about whether there's enough hours in the working day, the logistics of putting these refuse collection rounds together depend not only on the number of hours in the day, but actually when those hours start and finish, because the refuse carts have to be emptied, and the trick is to try and do that not in rush hour conditions, which is why you start early and you try and finish about sort of mid-afternoonish. In practice, crews tend to commence what they have experience tells them are the high-use roads to ensure that they are off the main routes by the time we get to the traffic rush hour, and that practice and approach will not change. But what we can't do is reorganise the entire refuse collection rounds around the notion that nobody should have their bin emptied before 7:30, because clearly there are plenty of people now who are getting their bins emptied at 6:30.
Supplementary, Councillor?
Yes, I hope Councillor Smith will accept that I suppose I understand something about the refuse collection because I've been portfolio holder there before, so I fully understand what he's saying about the timings. But given that we've got the petition in, I just wondered whether councillors could have a list of the proposed plan of which streets they go to, you know, the sort of routing they're taking. Is it possible that councillors could have a look at that? So should any residents come to them, they could help to talk to them about that their street may first be collected, maybe at 10 o'clock, if we know a bit about the timing of the, or a bit about the route, about the way the refuse get collected.
Councillor Smart?
I think it might well be possible to do something like that. The only thing I would ask is that as people on the Transport and Environment Working Group will be aware, there is a plan at the moment which has divided the town into 4 groups, and then the town centre is divided up a bit differently, that lets people know what day and what combination of bins are going to be collected. But the other thing that they know is that we are going to have to keep these things under review, because until you actually start running the refuse collections, you don't know what shortcuts might be or what actual experience that there might be of having to handle bins in certain combinations and so on. So I think what will probably happen is, rather than... We've probably got an idea of when bins are going to get collected in what streets, but I think it might be a good idea to let the thing run for, say, 3 months or so, and when it's settled down and we've got a more definite idea of what's going to happen, you know, week in, week out from there on, perhaps we'll look at publishing something then.
Thank you. Question 4, Councillor Stewart to Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the overview and scrutiny meeting held on the 13th of March, councillors learnt that Ipswich could now be described as a young town because of the comparatively large numbers of residents under 10 years of age. Does the Leader of the Council agree with Councillor Kirby when he explained that it was due to all the Polish people having children, or with Councillor Fern, who described that characterisation as disgusting?
Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was not present at the meeting referred to. However, it has been reported to me by several people present that the comments made by Councillor Kirby were not as recorded in Councillor Stroud's question. That said, it is clear that some of Councillor Kirby's comments were not appropriate, and the matter has been dealt with under the Labour Group's disciplinary processes. Councillor Kirby has apologised to members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the officers present, and he will be attending an appropriate training course in the near future. He has also agreed to step down as chair of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee with immediate effect.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, the Leader of the Council can quibble over the wording if he wishes to, but though I was there and heard it quite clearly, Councillor Kirby has apologised and stood down. Would the Leader of the Council like to take this opportunity to apologise to the Polish community for the way it has been characterised?
Councillor Ellesmere.
Mr. Mayor, as I said, a number of people who've spoken to me about that meeting who were there say that the exact wording that's used in Councillor Stroud's question is not as described. Mr. Mayor, the Labour Group has acted swiftly, decisively, and I believe appropriately to deal with this unfortunate incident. I know Councillor Kirby is reflecting on what happened. I think Councillor Stroud may also wish to reflect on his own behaviour. He may wish to reflect why, as chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, he did not challenge these comments at the time. He may wish to reflect on why he chose to raise this issue through a question at a council meeting where Councillor Kirby would be unable to respond rather than through a formal complaint. And he may wish to reflect on the fact that, as I've said, a number of people who were present are concerned that Councillor Stroud's question does not accurately report what was actually said at the meeting. If I'm going to be honest, Mr. Mayor, I don't think Councillor Stroud has exactly covered himself in glory over this either.
Question 5. Again, Councillor Stroud to Councillor Ellesmere.
I think the Leader of the Council has to do the reflecting. Is the administration being effectively scrutinised? So there's an open goal for you.
Councillor Ellesmere.
Well, Mr. Mayor, as Councillor Stroud is currently the chair of the Council's Scrutiny Committee, I think we'd all rather hope that he'd know the answer to that.
Supplementary, Councillor.
Well, as chair, of course, I was railed at for asking too many questions. Nevertheless, I'll carry out a little bit of scrutiny right now. Is the Leader of the Council aware that since June, Labour attendance at Overview and Scrutiny has seen Councillor T. Grant miss half the meetings, Councillor Rawlinson failed to attend a meeting since September, and for all I know, Councillor Mudek being replaced by a cardboard cutout in June. In addition, Councillor Chisholm, Grant, McCartney, Mudek, Wright and Rawlinson have had not a single contribution to the work programme.
Now, please, let's have some order. Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There will always be occasions where councillors can't attend committee meetings. If you have a look at the attendance record of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, you will find that councillors of all parties have missed meetings. In the main, as long as they are able to find a substitute, that shouldn't present a problem. The key thing, of course, is not whether you attend, but what contribution you make. I can only speak from experience, but the last time I went to Overview and Scrutiny Committee was to discuss the budget. I do have to say that I remember being subjected to more rigorous questioning by the Labour members of the committee than the opposition members. This may help to explain why the Conservative amendment to the budget at the last council meeting was such a fiasco.
Question 6. Councillor Goldsmith to Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the portfolio holder tell me what trade and cultural links have been made with Nettuno since the signing of the friendship agreement?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The friendship agreement is based mainly on historical and religious links between our two towns dating from the 1500s. We signed the friendship agreement in 2011, and since then there have been cultural and civic links between the two towns. Primary schools in Nettuno and Ipswich have made links. The mayors of Ipswich, both past and present, have always been invited as a special guest of honour to the annual festival, and there are reciprocal visits by civic leaders and particularly by members of St Mary Elm's Church to Nettuno. And our mayor, I understand, can choose to visit either Arras or Nettuno once in their mayoral year.
Supplementary, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we can go back to the document, I've got to ask a question first, haven't I? Or you might stop me. Will the portfolio holder agree that we have missed a great opportunity here to have better links with them? And if I can go back, and I will explain why we have missed these things. If we go back to July 2011, when this was tabled at the council meeting, this paper had your name on the top, so these are your words. This friendship would provide the opportunity for relationships to develop between the two towns, with the potential for cultural exchanges between young people and schools, musical societies to exchange concerts, and for the trade interflow between local businesses, for example. It was also said the benefits to Ipswich would include the potential to attract increased numbers of visitors and to generally raise awareness of Ipswich as a tourist destination, to promote community well-being and to create cultural, economic and educational links which would be likely to benefit the inhabitants of Ipswich. Of course, financial considerations were taken into account.
Raise the question, Councillor.
I did ask the question to start with. This is information, so I'll get the correct answer. One must not interrupt me. I'll get confused. The financial considerations of this particular... Can we all be quiet, please?
Councillor, can you get on, please?
I'm trying, but there's a lot of interruption from that side of the room. The financial considerations at the time was the Mayor and Mayoress may be invited to visit Nettuno as part of the annual spring pilgrimage, but these costs should be covered by the mayoral budget. There are no...
Councillor, we don't need all that explanation. I'm sorry. We'll get the answer.
So am I, because we're missing an opportunity. Would the portfolio holder assure me within the next 12 months that something is done about this friendship so this town can benefit from the association?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think when this friendship, we agreed to sign a friendship agreement, which we were happy to do, but I don't think anybody envisaged at the time that links with Nettuno would be a key economic development priority. And I think that needs to be clearly made. Nettuno is a little town. Its population is 46,000 people. It's a third of the size of Ipswich. And while we are very happy to have civic links, to have religious links and to support any other links that other organisations, musical, etc., may wish to make. I don't think we are going to be in the forefront of expanding these links given current resources, much as we would like to do that. A footnote. Not long after we signed the friendship agreement, a meeting was organised in order to, discuss and push forward the kind of links, I guess, Councillor Goldsmith is describing. We went along, members of various local churches went along, and there was a solicitor from a local law firm who'd got an interest in working with Italian law firms already and was interested to see, what this Nettuno link might lead to. Now, unfortunately, the key proponent of that meeting and of that work going forward was Father Haley Dosser, and that meeting subsequently never took place, and events intervened, shall we say. And so I think we are where we are. We support civic and religious links, which is what we have at the minute, but I cannot see that these would be expanded in the rather expansive way described by Councillor Goldsmith.
Thank you. Question 7, Councillor Goldsmith again. To Councillor Smart.
I'll have to get your breath. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got to find the question. Here we are. Can the portfolio holder tell me the policies of this council in respect of the rules of residence putting out wheelie bins?
Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In keeping with the household waste collection arrangements and guidance that we have published, wheel bins and authorised refuse sacks must be presented currently before 6:30, but obviously before 6 o'clock from the 1st of April, on the day of collection at the curtilage of the property. Where the property is not located on accessible and or adopted public highway, it is likely that bins will have to be presented at the nearest suitable public highway. Wheel bins and refuse sacks should not be presented on the highway any longer than 24 hours prior to collection, or remain outside the curtilage of the property 24 hours thereafter. Mr. Mayor, I await Councillor Goldsmith's supplementary with a blend of trepidation and anticipation.
Can we have a shorter version of a supplementary instead, please?
How much shorter would you like it? Can Councillor Smart explain to me why this town has wheelie bins all over the pavements 24/7, 365 days of the year, except for 1 year, which is 366. And these wheelie bins, as we know, have an enforcement order on them, but nobody in this council takes any notice. They allow these bins to stay out. They force people with prams out onto the highway. They force people that have mobility scooters to use the highway. I hope Councillor, the portfolio holder, can't think of his name at the moment, but Smart, assures me that within 28 days the enforcement of removing wheelie bins from our pavements is put into force.
Councillor Smart.
I'm very happy to discuss possible enforcement with the officers concerned, and I'll see that Councillor Goldsmith gets the assurances he seeks.
Question 8, Councillor Devon. To Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the present council seeking to engage with residents for their opinions, would you agree with me that people need accurate information?
Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would hope so, just as I would hope that Councillor Dedman can give me some accurate information in supplementary so I know what he's actually talking about.
Supplementary, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Would the leader agree with me that the Labour Party has let residents of East Ipswich down at the recent South East Area Committee by advertising a 7:30 start when it should have been a 7 p.m. start, and residents missed the opportunity of a detailed presentation by Graham Newman on transport issues that affected every resident in the south east of Ipswich?
Councillor Ellsworth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, a meeting I wasn't present at, but I have just been informed that the meeting did start at 7:30. It was a presentation that was before the meeting.
Thank you. Question 9. Councillor Vickery, Councillor Moles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Please will the portfolio holder for housing inform us how many Ipswich Borough Council houses have been allocated to armed services personnel since the signing of the military covenant?
Councillor Moles. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillor Vickery. Yes, I will. Perhaps first, though, I can remind councillors what is the nature of the military covenant, because that was what Ipswich Borough Council signed up to in October 2012. The covenant expresses the moral obligation owed to those who serve or have served in our armed forces. The housing allocation policy was reviewed and incorporates the spirit of that covenant in that armed services personnel who meet the general criteria for housing receive priority in their choice-based lettings banding. Since the covenant was signed, 9 armed services personnel have been accommodated. Of these, 8 are former military personnel, and the other one was a bereaved partner.
Thank you. I've got 3 more questions. I know this is supplementary, but I've got 3 more questions left, and we're running out of time. Can I have a proposal that we carry on? Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for that answer. I'm pleased to hear that NIE have actually taken up the benefits. As my supplementary, I'd like to ask what steps are Ipswich Borough Council taking to advise service personnel of the benefits available under the military covenant, as I'm currently helping with an application for housing for a member of the Territorial Army who returned yesterday from 6 months in Afghanistan and was totally unaware of the military covenant or the benefits available to him under it.
Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it doesn't surprise me, but it's inevitable, I suppose, that not everybody is completely up to date on the details of the military covenant. Whenever we do advertise such things, and this is something that perhaps we can put on the website if it's not already on there at the moment, we can add to that. But it is, of course, something that we would probably rely upon the armed services to try to get through to their personnel so that they know of the kind of things that might be available from and by the local authorities.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 10. Councillor Harrison. Councillor Ellsworth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What is the Council's intention regarding the recently purchased Crown Court and police station sites?
Councillor Ellsworth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Council purchased the old Crown Court building at the end of January this year using the Strategic Asset Purchase Fund set up by this administration. The Council has not currently taken ownership of the police station. However, in the terms of the historic legal agreement for the site, it will revert to the ownership of the Council when the building is declared surplus to the requirements by the police. Our current expectation is that this will occur soon after Easter. In the medium to long term, we will seek to use the Council's ownership of the 2 sites to take forward the recommendations of the DTZ Town Centre Retail Report. In the short term, we have invited third sector organisations to put forward proposals for the Old Crown Court for the benefit and support of the community, and an organisation has been identified and should shortly take possession. We're currently reviewing what options are available for the police station.
Supplementary, Councillor?
Thank you. I was very pleased to hear that, Councillor Ellesmere, because I was going to ask you whether you thought that these sites could provide some sort of income streams through rental income for film and television production companies whilst awaiting the developer. And just to expand on that, my son-in-law works in the music and film industry, and they actually spend an awful lot of money building sets for such series as Silk, where they use court scenes. I wondered if you might like to put that into the pot when you're thinking about what you could do with it. And I also thought plays could take place for schools in there. School councils could actually take place, and perhaps a rather wacky idea that you could have overview scrutiny held in there, which would be, you know, a little different. And maybe when you have got retention of the police station, the nuclear bunker could actually show Dr. Strangelove.
Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Councillor Hassett. Obviously, Councillor Hassett was surprised that I gave a sensible answer to a question, but of course that's the only sensible question that I've actually had from the Conservative group all night. Obviously, we would look at what potential uses we can for the police station. Obviously, we do have a community group looking to take the lease on the Crown Court. I know that their intention is hopefully to turn at least one of the courtrooms into a community performance space. Obviously, we are reviewing what we can do with the police station, but I think one of the things it will not be is a stop for Councillor Harson's tourist train.
Question 11. Councillor Sensi to Councillor Radke.
I'll be sure to tell the audience that that question was a stupid question, Councillor Vickery.
Mr. Mayor, questions to me, not questions to everybody.
Will the portfolio hold for culture and leisure explain the logic of locking the gates of Stone Lodge Park in Chantry?
Councillor Radke.
Thank you. Up until February 2010, Stone Lodge Park was locked at dusk on a daily basis, following requests from members of the public that the park was left open overnight to facilitate greater access. The park was left unlocked overnight. This was initiated over a trial period. However, due to an increase in antisocial behaviour later into the evenings, the decision was taken to reintroduce locking of the park, which recommenced in July 2010. Park opening times are kept under regular review, and if there's any intelligence that any local members have that perhaps the position has changed about antisocial behaviour, I'd be happy to hear representations.
Supplementary, Councillor.
Thank you for that reply, Councillor Rudkin. Would the portfolio holder like to be informed that there is a big gap of about 10 yards in Lakeside gate area that apparently a resident has said to me you could get a truck through, so closing the gate, and that's been since October. So perhaps the portfolio holder would like to know why she hasn't been told this by whoever is locking the gate. I'm disappointed that perhaps you hadn't told me that earlier, Councillor Chitty, but now I know. I'll get on to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could the portfolio holder bring me up to date with the opening of Athena Hall car park?
Councillor Smart.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that for some time now, Councillor Parsons has taken a keen interest in what must appear to many to be glacial progress over this. I am advised that the management agreement between the Council and UCS is now signed and is ready for imminent completion. However, there has been a further delay because the company that owns the freehold of the car park has recently requested that the Council provides him with an additional indemnity in terms of any future potential breach of the management agreement. The wording of this requested new provision is being looked at by our legal team. I am optimistic that the agreement will be concluded shortly, but I'm not going to say how shortly.
Supplementary, Councillor?
So disappointing, Mr Mayor. 4.5 years we've been waiting for this to open. 4.5 years. And it was a condition of the planning permission, and I would like to say to Councillor Smart, if this had been a resident, enforcement action would have been taken. And when I suggested that to one of the officers, and the fact that there were over 100... Yes, well, the question is, isn't it disgraceful that we, the council, couldn't have pushed for this and taken enforcement action to make sure that this car park is open? And the reply from the officer was, you can park in shed 8. Well, during this winter, you needed side routes to get over your car to park in shed 8. So I think that we should be proactive and get this open for summer and hopefully for Maritime Ipswich, which I had before last year.
Councillor Sparrow?
Yeah, well, I can't, of course, claim responsibility for all of those 4.5 years, because some of that is obviously my predecessor's term. But I am advised by officers that they are prepared to take appropriate planning enforcement action. It is, I think, reasonable for us to try and do things as reasonably as we can and in a cooperative sense. And as I say, we have got this legal team working on the revised wording of this legal agreement concerning the potential indemnity.
Thank you, Councillor. That concludes that item. We move on to item 7, Memorandum of Understanding with Suffolk College. Councillor Elder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As we were discussing earlier, all public sector organisations are facing a squeeze on their finance from government cuts. In response to this, many have looked to share services with similar organisations. All the district councils in Suffolk outside Ipswich have paired off and provide those services jointly. Suffolk County Council is looking to share services with Norfolk, and Suffolk Police had already merged many services prior to the controversial proposals for the control room. These existing shared arrangements all have one thing in common though, they are all between the same type of organisation. We're not aware of anywhere else where a council and a further education college have decided to work together, so this agreement between the two organisations may be a first in the country. Suffolk New College is of course an obvious partner for the council. It has always been rooted firmly in Ipswich. Many people still refer to it as the Civic College. And we've already worked together successfully on a number of projects. The iPrint joint printing and design service run from a unit in Grafton House has already made significant savings for both organisations and is looking to expand its trading to bring in more income. And I'm personally very proud of the joint projects that we've undertaken with the college, Active Lives and Lapwing to reopen the plant nursery in Chantry Park, closed by the previous administration and left empty for years. The glass houses are now back in use and being used by the college to provide a new urban horticulture course, helping to raise the level of skills in Ipswich. The Memorandum of Understanding sets out a non-exhaustive list of areas where we believe we can work closer together in future. The initial focus of the partnership will of course be on identifying savings. Consideration has already been given to joint approaches to IT, facilities and treasury management. The college's sponsorship of Suffolk New Academy will also allow us to explore the possibility of working to deliver savings to schools in Ipswich. But there will also be soft benefits such as the ability of staff to gain wider experience from secondment opportunities between the two organisations. And Mr Mayor, the example of Chantry Nursery shows the wider potential of the partnership. We would look at expanding the number of high-quality apprentices we can provide to Suffolk New College students and look at where we can provide practical work experience for them, for instance around events management. The low level of skills in Ipswich and the wider Suffolk economy will become an increasing block of future growth of our town if it is not tackled. This has cross-party recognition. It formed the focus of the city deal we signed with the government. Our partnership with Suffolk New College will be Ipswich focused. Unlike the collaboration we discussed earlier, this one will not see jobs shipped out of the town. This agreement is good for Ipswich. It will deliver significant savings for our two organisations and better enable us to tackle one of the major economic issues facing our town. I commend it to the Council.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to welcome this paper as a positive move for two organisations and for the county town of Suffolk. Savings may have brought us together, but I don't believe that this is a shotgun wedding. We're already geographically close, we have a public sector ethos spreading across two organisations, and a track record of successful joint work. Certainly we shape written design, which used to be part of my portfolio, and following on from that, borough officers are set to help the college with marketing, press and social media, whilst covering compassionate leave at the college. IT provision for our IBC staff means that remote working from the college site is no problem, so we can get straight over there and get stuck in straight away. I think the looser arrangement will suit both parties, allowing growth, or indeed contraction, at the speed of our choosing. This arrangement will put Ipswich at the centre of everything it does, and I'm very pleased to second this paper.
Thank you.
Yes, I think this is a good move. I support the paper. I'm just a little bit disappointed that it doesn't really give any sort of financial implications at all. We're not sure whether they'll make more savings than us or the other way around. I understand that it's just a memorandum of understanding, but I would like to ask that we do get updates and that we are kept informed of the financial implications as and when they happen, rather than just sort of yearly, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Lib Dem Group welcomes and supports this initiative. It is very early days, so I wouldn't expect much more detail than what there already is here. The only thing I would say going forward, in perhaps year 2 or 3, that a hard look at back office functions may or may not be fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Councillor Esmond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased from the support from all sides of the council chamber. Just to reassure Councillor Chenchi, it is part of the agreement that there will be at least an annual update. Obviously, if there are significant operational changes resulting from shared services with the college, then that will require executive reports in the usual way.
All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 8. Policy statement amendment. The statement has been tabled. Councillor Cook.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an annual report. Requirement for this was introduced by the Localism Act 2011, so I think it's the third time around that we have presented this. There's no decision as such in this item tonight. This is effectively just a statement of what we're already doing that is pulled together in this format in the interests of transparency and ensuring that the public know what we are doing on pay policy. As you already said, there are 2 extra papers that have been tabled tonight. The first one is an amendment to paragraph 6.9.2, which relates to page 40, and an additional paragraph 6.9.3. This was emailed to the councillors on Tuesday, and there are hard copies tonight. The second is Appendix A, which is the council's new SSH pay scales.
This was accidentally omitted from the print run, emailed to councillors on Thursday, and tabled tonight. As I said, Mr Mayor, this is an annual report. Since last year, there have been two major changes in the council's pay policy. First of all, because we believe in a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, we've implemented the living wage for the council's workforce with effect from the 1st of April 2013. Secondly, we are bringing to a close the 17-year saga of single status harmonisation with new pay scales ready for implementation by way of a collective agreement with effect from the 1st of April 2014. This momentous change sweeps away any historic pay anomalies and provides a new, simpler system which is fit for the future of this council. Last year, Mr Mayor, we said that we were the most equal council in the east of England and one of the most equal in the country, and I'm pleased to say that we still very much are. Within the pay policy statement, you'll see reference to the Hutton multiplier. Hutton said that the highest paid worker should not receive more than 20 times the remuneration of the lowest, and at this council, I'm pleased to say our multiplier is only 6.6, so dramatically less than what is suggested. Also, Mr Mayor, at this council we don't want an Andrea Hill-style scandal on our hands, and that is why we have a special arrangement within the pay policy which says that if we are to ever pay the chief executive in excess of £100,000, it requires a special agreement of council. I would commend this pay policy statement, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Grant.
Councillor Grant, seconded, and reserving my right to speak.
Councillor Harrison. Sorry. No. Councillor Cook. Sorry. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I must say I'm pleased that things have moved on. Councillor Cook has been allowed to present a paper to council, makes a change from the budget. I would just like to make 2 or 3 comments on the pay policy statement, Mr Mayor. First of all, I would like to commend the very reasonable approach being taken by the Chief Executive to his own terms and conditions of service. But I'm sure that he's going to look forward to European, county and national elections more than borough council elections in the future. One of the objectives of the pay policy is set out in the policy under paragraph 3, where it talks about to set remuneration sufficiently to attract and retain adequately experienced, trained and qualified individuals to deliver the council's priorities. Well, that's an objective that I find easy to support, but I do query it in practice. I query it particularly, Mr Mayor, with the Chief Financial Officer, because I notice here that the post of Chief Financial Officer is an operational manager who is paid a market supplement. Now, the Chief Financial Officer's job is an extraordinarily responsible one. He is responsible for the probity of the council's accounts and requires a great deal of knowledge and expertise in this area. And I really raise the question as to whether a salary of £50,000, which is what is being offered at the moment, is really adequate for the Chief Financial Officer, the Section 151 officer of a council as big as Ipswich. I do not think, personally, that we are paying sufficient money for that particular post. I would have the same comment to make about the monitoring officer, if that too is settled on an operational manager with a market supplement. I know that the next paper is slightly different from that, but in the longer term, I can see that the operational manager plus market supplement is a possibility there. And I think that that needs to be challenged because I suspect the salaries are not adequate for the work involved. I'd like to make a comment also on the single status pay scales which have now been circulated, particularly about the middle management. Middle management in this authority is vitally important because it's an operational management level which responsibility is largely taken in practice for the quality of the frontline service offered to local people. And yet, our operational managers are being paid on a scale which finishes at £45,000 a year, and there's a gap of some £18,000 between them and the heads of service. I've heard the term squeeze middle, and I think that might actually apply to the middle management in the Borough Council. They are being squeezed unfairly, and I don't think they are being rewarded properly for the level of responsibility of their posts. And that, I believe, is why there is an amendment now, or an addition tabled today, talking about the use of market supplements. Because market supplements, I suspect, are now being used to increase the salaries of middle management and operational managers because they have not been rewarded properly in the first instance. That is my suspicion. And all I can say is that if single status has just been finished, there shouldn't be any real need for market supplements if the job has been done properly. Clearly, it hasn't been done properly here. One other point of interest to me, picking it up from this paper, is that we have one head of service who's a chief officer and 4 heads of service who are not chief officers. Again, I suspect that shows that the administration isn't really in control of its own affairs. But, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to support the publication of the pay policy statement, as if only because it shows the dog's dinner that the administration has made of single status.
Anyone else want to speak on that? Councillor Ross.
At the time, it could obviously be he or she is operating officer because we are an equal opportunity employer, unlike the Conservative front bench in Parliament. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. To address some of the points that Councillor Cardinal has made, first of all, he may have missed section 6.10 in the pay policy, which talks about statutory officer allowances, which relate specifically to the monitoring officer and the chief financial officer. So we do recognise that these officers have additional responsibilities that they need to deliver, and that is why the HR committee agreed those payments on November 2013. As far as middle managers are concerned and the SSH pay scales, I have to say that the scheme that we have put in place has winners and losers at all levels of the council, but it does not have a significant number of losers in middle management or at the operational manager level, as Councillor Carnell would suggest. So if Councillor Carnell believes that these employees of the council are underpaid, then he had 7 years in which he could have done something about that, but he didn't. I think the evidence at the moment is that we have pretty much a full complement of operational managers and that we are paying the correct rate for the job. Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, the market is not always rational. Whilst we've put in place with SSH a system that is rational, fair, treats everyone equally, unfortunately the market doesn't, the job market doesn't work that way, and we can't buck the market. And for that reason, as there was before, there is now still a need for a small number of market supplements. We're talking about a handful of cases across the council, not a great number, and I think that by and large the SSH system will serve this council well. And if we're talking about dog's dinners, I think that was the arrangement that we've had up till now, where we've had a morass of different terms and conditions, different pay scales that have applied across the council. where simplifying it and the new system is surely much more fit for purpose than the old. I'd like to move the recommendations at 13.1, Mr Mayor, that the Council adopt the pay policy statement for 2014-15.
All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 9, appointment of the monitoring officer. Councillor Cook.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Shorter reports to present, generally speaking, in this meeting. Section 5 of the Local Government and Housing Act 1989 requires all councils to appoint a monitoring officer. This officer ensures that the council conducts its business in a proper legal fashion and has additional specific responsibilities in respect of the council's constitution, freedom of information and the conduct of councillors. As councillors already know, the council's current monitoring officer, Mrs Claire Barrett, will be leaving the Borough Council in the summer. This report is being brought now to ensure a smooth handover to a new monitoring officer at the time of her departure. The proposal in this paper is that Mrs Helen Clutch be appointed as the council's monitoring officer. Arrangements for the remuneration of the monitoring officer agreed by HR committee in November mean that Mrs Pluck will not attract any additional remuneration for taking on these extra responsibilities. Mr Mayor, Mrs Barrett served as the monitoring officer since 2008. That does all seem now an awfully long time ago. Tories were halfway through their time in office then. Jim Hare, chief executive, council was investing millions in Iceland, and we were about halfway through the process of SSH, moving very slowly. As I said earlier, Mrs Barrett is not leaving the Ipswich Borough Council for a few months and will continue as monitoring officer until that time. Nonetheless, now seems like an appropriate time to thank Mrs Barrett for her service as the council's monitoring officer. She's always, in my experience, discharged her responsibilities in a thorough, good-humoured and professional, even-handed manner, no matter whether you were on the receiving end of legal advice about a slightly dry council paper or a standards investigation. I'd commend this report to council.
Councillor Grant.
Yeah, Councillor Grant seconding this and reiterating sentiments and thanks to Claire Barrett.
I also would like to thank Mrs Barrett for her hard work and her support during the time I was leader of the council. It's always been very much appreciated, and whatever and wherever she goes, I wish her all the very best of luck. Just a pity, Councillor Cook, you had to bring up the Icelandic fans again.
Yeah, no comment to make on the paper, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to add that Claire has always given very frank and often quite humorous advice, and that's always very welcome, often at trying circumstances.
Anyone else? No? Those in agreement? Thank you. That's carried.
Mr Mayor, would you allow me to go? I've got to go to a birthday party. My youngest son is 30 today.
Yes. Item 10. Yeah. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a state of community involvement, and it sets out the ways in which the council involves the community in the planning system. That's on 2.9 report and listed in appendices 1 and 2 of the SCI. It's a document subject to periodic updates and reviews. Our last one, I think, was 2007, and this is the latest review and update. It reflects recent changes in legislation, including the Localism Act, the Planning Department experience in major planning applications, lessons that can be learned and applied in a new statement of community involvement, and it bears in mind matters such as costs to the council and changing ways that we now communicate, which we didn't particularly in the years up to 2007, electronic means in particular. What it does is to try to set out, it's a rather impossible task, but it tries to set out the best ways of engaging the widest possible community in planning applications, from ordinary applications, like for 5 houses, to 205, and in ways that are proportionate to the nature of the application. The SCI has gone out to extensive consultation over 8 weeks last year, as described under Section 5 of the report, and in Appendix 2 of the report, we have summed up the comments received and the officers' responses to them. They range from community groups like the Northern Print Protection Group, to statutory consultees like Anglian Water, to a developer, Crest, and I'd like here to thank the Conservative Group and to Councillor Stewart for their submission to the document. Thank you. I'd also like noted my thanks to Robert Hobbs and the planning policy team. It is a hard slog, I think, getting all this done, and I think they have done a good job. It is a learning document. If we look at page 65 and the recommendations, little 2 shows that we are able to make amendments to the document, minor amendments to the document as and when, as we go forward. So I'm happy, Chair, to bring this to Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I formally second and reserve the right to speak. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you. All in favour? Unanimous? Thank you. Item 11. Employee Code. Councillor Cook.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, on this report, some minor amendments have been taken tonight. This is, again, the work of the monitoring officer who's been reviewing the paper diligently and has identified a few small corrections that need to be made. The Employee Code of Conduct is the key document for this council that sets out our ethical and compliance framework. It hasn't been reviewed, Mr. Mayor, since the last time Labour were running this council, so it's long overdue for a fresh look. This is a long report spanning from page 133 to 166 and in quite a small time. But at this council we do have one of the most diverse workforces in local government, and we do need to set out clearly what the expected standards of behaviour are for those employees. So it does take a certain amount of space. In conducting this review, elements of best practice have been drawn from other councils across the country, as well as the NHS and some major local employers such as Willis and BT. Major areas of change in this policy from the last are around social media, which didn't exist in any meaningful format 10 years back, also changes in money laundering, bribery, equalities and so on. Consultation has been conducted with HR experts in the council and outside, corporate management team, and all three recognised unions at this authority. Most of the responses that we got from unions have been taken on board, but as set out in paragraph 5.2, there are a couple that were not felt to be appropriate and have not been taken up. Mr Mayor, I'd like to commend the report to Council.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, Councillor Brown, probably secretary and reserve the right to speak.
Councillor Clay?
All too easy tonight. I'd like to move the recommendation at 13.1 that the Council adopts the updated employee code of conduct set out in Appendix 1.
All those in favour? That's unanimous again. Thank you. Item 12. Revised programme of meetings. Reviewing the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This Council is required to keep its constitution under review. Although there have been incremental changes recently, this is the first major review for some years, and this has been a significant task, as is obvious from the full size of the document, and also the fact that we have discovered some further minor amendments which have been tabled tonight. I would like to thank the officers who put this together and my fellow members of the Constitution Working Group, that's Councillor Knowles, Chenchi and Can, who have gone through the changes line by line. There are four major changes in the Constitution. Firstly, the new Employee Code of Conduct that we've just agreed, which forms part of the Constitution. Secondly, when Labour took control of the Council, we said that when single status harmonisation had been completed, we would seek to abolish the Human Resources Committee. Now, there are some, including myself at times, who thought that day might never come, but we have agreement now, and SSH will be implemented in less than a fortnight. The budget report we took to the last council meeting consequently included savings from abolishing HR committee. The former roles of the committee will essentially be handled in three ways. Senior appointments and dismissals and changes in terms and conditions of employment will be decided by this body, full council, on the advice of a cross-party employment and advisory panel. Human resources policies will be decided by executive, and decisions on workforce composition and structure will be delegated to the chief executive. Thirdly, the recent peer review undertaken by the LGA highlighted a number of concerns about the appropriateness of officer delegations within the Constitution and how this is stifling innovation. One of the 7 recommendations was that we should better delegate decision-making on operational matters, enabling senior management and councillors to focus on strategic choices and leadership of place. This review of the Constitution changes the scheme of delegation to ensure officers have sufficient decision-making powers to run their services effectively and efficiently. In particular, it gives a number of specific powers to operations managers that were always in practice exercised by them, but according to the Constitution were delegated to their heads of service. The final changes are to incorporate into contract standing orders key policies of this administration around ensuring contractors providing services to the council pay their staff a living wage, disqualifying contractors operating illegal blacklisting schemes, and to give consideration to wider local economic activity when awarding contracts. So although this may appear a somewhat dry and technical document, the changes we are proposing will potentially have wide-ranging implications both for the operation of the council and the wider Ipswich economy. I move the recommendation.
I'd just like to formally second the
Councillor Carroll?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to concentrate my comments in the time available on two issues really. The first one is the abolition of the HR committee, which I very much regret. The HR committee was set up by the previous administration for very good reasons. First of all, it was to make sure that all councillors had the opportunity to be kept informed of staff employment issues. And as staffing consumes about 70% of the budget here, that doesn't seem to be an unreasonable approach. It also meant that all staffing issues were dealt with in one place. Third advantage of the committee was that it was transparent, and the unions were given the opportunity to make their comments known on every item. So Unison was extremely efficient in making its comments on every proposal that was put forward. And of course, the other advantage was that members of the committee could develop expertise in this field and make a really positive contribution in this area. Before the committee was set up, we had a system of officer delegation and terms and conditions being decided by council. Now, what have we got? In the words of Councillor Ellesmere, we're really going back to the future. Because now HR issues are going to be dealt with in three arenas. The first arena is increased officer delegation. In other words, all power is being put in the hands of anonymous officials. Decisions are going to be taken behind closed doors. There will be greater secrecy, and councillors can't call in officer decisions. So there's a greater chance of ordinary councillors here being kept in the dark. I ask the question, where are these officer decisions going to be recorded? They're certainly not recorded on the website, because I've looked it up, and there is a space on the website for officer decisions, and I couldn't find one there. Doesn't bode well for the future, does it? I'd make a point here linked to market supplements, which I raised earlier on. I gather that market supplements are now being decided by officers. And again I ask the question, where are those decisions being published? I agree that individuals should not be identified, but councillors should know how many supplements have been awarded, how many have been rejected, and how much has been paid out. There's no transparency about this at the moment, and as market supplements are going to be used far more widely now because of the dog's dinner, or I could call it a pig's ear, that the administration have made of SSH. This is an extremely important point. The second arena for HR issues will now be the Executive Committee, which will deal with management policies, HR management policies. Yet more power in the hands of the Executive Committee, which in my opinion already has too much power in this council. And finally, the third arena will be council itself, which will deal with contractual terms and conditions. So if there's any argument between councillors over the terms and conditions of staff, this will take place in council. And personally, I do not think that's the best arena for such debates. It would be far better for these matters to be considered in a specialist HR committee where councillors have some specialist knowledge of the subject. But also related to this, and I don't think this point has been made very clearly at all, is that the Employment Appeals Subcommittee is being wound up. It's disappeared already, I believe. And under the old arrangements, an employee who was dismissed from the council had the right of appeal to elected councillors. Now what happens if an officer is dismissed? An employee is dismissed by officers. He has a right of appeal, or she has a right of appeal to an officer panel. There is no right of appeal to elected councillors as far as employees are concerned. And I think that is a definite backward step as far as this council is concerned. We're told in the report that Unison has been consulted about it. We're not told what their response was. And I'm very surprised that Unison is happy with the abolition of the HR committee, because that committee gave Unison the opportunity to comment on every item. I can't believe that officers with delegated powers are going to be so meticulous about consulting Unison. The second issue that I have serious concerns about with the change in the Constitution, Mr. Mayor, is the pre-election period. The Chief Executive is now being given power to take executive decisions during the pre-election period. And this year, that was a period of some 2 months. I fundamentally disagree with this, as I believe that decisions should be taken by elected councillors. Portfolio holders not up for election are available to take these decisions. But as we know, the leader doesn't trust his portfolios to take decisions, or even present their own budgets. In conclusion, Mr. Mayor, why is the HR committee being abolished? Well, we've just been told by Councillor Ellesmere it's to save money. In the budget papers, it says it will save £3,000 a year. In this paper, it says £6,000 a year. Can't the administration even get this figure right? Some time to get its act together. But HR committee will inevitably go. There will be more power put in the hands of unelected officers, and the powerful executive committee will become even more powerful. There will be less transparency, more secrecy, less challenge to decisions. I would sum up by saying the new despotism of old Labour. We should vote against the adoption of the amended Constitution for these reasons.
Councillor Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Liberal Democrat Group, as it remains this evening, will be supporting the Constitution paper. I'd just like to say a few words about the Human Resources Committee. When I was first elected to this council and got to know a little bit about what was going on, what was run and how things were run, I found out about the Human Resources Committee, and frankly the air turned blue when I heard about it. I've never agreed with it existing, and I am surprised that a Conservative is now telling us that it shouldn't exist. Should exist, whereas the Labour Party is telling us it shouldn't. It seems to be almost a reversal of normal things. The reasons why I disagree with it is because, and to address Councillor Carnell's point, is because as our role as councillors, and particularly councillors in administration and running things, isn't to interfere. The role of the administration particularly is to set strategy and policy, to interfere occasionally with operational decisions, particularly as residents report issues and so on. But it's not to manage the council, and it's not to manage the managers. Many people in this room have been managers or supervisors down the years. I'm sure you'll be aware of the effect, the demoralising effect it can have for somebody from a position of not good knowledge and ignorance, in fact, to interfere with your own decisions. The ability for an employee who may or may not have a grudge, rightly or wrongly, to be able to go to somebody else over and above everything to complain about something that a manager's done. It's undermining, and it treats your own managers like children. The good thing about abolishing the Human Resources Committee is that it treats managers like adults. They should be responsible for how they manage and reform this land. The other thing that must be pointed out is that Councillor Carnell seems to have a problem with the executive having power. Now, we all disagree from time to time with what the administration does, that's within our rights. It's also within the rights of the administration to do what it wants to do in the law of the land. And they need to have power to do that. Concentrating power under the cabinet model is a good thing, even if the likes of the opposition from time to time get frustrated at it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. Just wanted to come back on a couple of points that Councillor Carnell raised. First of all, this idea that HR committee was somehow one-stop shop for all HR matters. That's something of a myth, Mr. Mayor. I mean, at this very meeting tonight, we've discussed the employee code of conduct and the pay policy statement of this council. So it was never the case that everything to do with HR went to HR committee. Secondly, on market supplements, Councillor Carnell makes the assertion that these are somehow far more widespread than they were in the past, but this is not substantiated, Mr Mayor, in any way whatsoever. They are not in any way more widespread than they were in the past. Only in November, Mr Mayor, the HR committee reviewed its market supplement policy, and if there were specific measures that Councillor Carnell or his expert colleagues on HR committee wanted to put forward for consideration, they could surely have done so at that point in time, but that did not happen to my memory. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else? Councillor Ellsworth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would just like to reiterate that I note the comments of the former Deputy Leader of the Conservative Group, but would like to point out that the current Deputy Leader of the Conservative Group, Councillor Chenshi, sat on the Constitution Working Group and did not have any problems with this. So it is a little odd that if the Conservative Group are now going to be voting against it. One point specifically that Councillor Carnell mentioned, which was about the delegation to the Chief Executive to make decisions in the pre-election period. This is something every single year that I've been on the council, there has been a report to either executive or the management committee as it was then, giving this delegation to the Chief Executive. That report appears every time the last executive meeting or whatever before the elections. It's always nodded through, there's never any discussion on it. It makes absolute sense just to put that in the Constitution because we know it's all going to happen anyway. There was one phrase that came to mind when I heard what Councillor Carnell said, particularly when he talked about keeping ordinary councillors in the dark, and that phrase is rank hypocrisy, because anybody who was aware of how Councillor Carnell operated when he was Deputy Leader of the Council would know that is exactly his modus operandi. Equally, I note his comments on unison, his concern for the unions. It's a first time for everything, isn't there? That concern for unison was never manifest in all the time that he was in charge of HR on the council. And just, finally coming back to HR committee, he says that it was open and transparent. He criticises decisions being made behind closed doors. Virtually every decision the HR committee made was on the closed agenda anyway, so all their decisions were behind closed doors. He noted some advantages which we could dispute, but the major disadvantage of HR committee, having an HR committee, was that it was bureaucratic and it led to sclerotic decision making in this council. We've had outside peer review to say that is the case. We're acting on that, and that is what this constitution does.
Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? That is carried. Agenda item 13. Revised programme of meeting. Councillor Ellsworth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We reviewed the revised programme meetings, particularly to deal with two aspects. One is the abolition of the HR committee, which we've just agreed, and also the moving executive to a 4-weekly cycle, which again was a small saving within the budget. We have circulated a revised schedule of meetings, which takes two things into account. Firstly, the Audit and Governance Committee meeting, which was due to be held on Tuesday the 17th of June, we were aware that that clashed with the executive. At the time we thought that we could actually manage the two together, but practicalities have meant that we can't. So we're proposing that that first committee meeting will be on Tuesday the 1st of July. Also, the October council meeting, we had proposed to move the council meeting from the 29th to the 22nd of October. When we came to have a look at that, the entire town hall and corn exchange complex is booked out for that week for UCS graduation ceremonies. And I think, given what we previously said about skills, that should take a priority. We don't intend to boot UCS out, so the intention is that we would move that council meeting back to the 29th of October. So with those two amendments to the revised programme that have been circulated, recommend those to Council.
Thank you.
Now, follow a second, please.
All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Changes to membership of committees, working groups, service panels, representative, outside bodies. No changes? Thank you. That concludes the business. Thank you for your contribution.